This is the Christmas Movie Screenwriter Podcast, episode number 23. Hello and welcome to the Christmas Movie Screenwriter Podcast. I'm your host, Karen McCann. The Christmas Movie Screenwriter is a podcast about writing, producing, and selling Christmas movies. You can find a transcript, show notes, and an action checklist on my website. Just go to www.christmasmoviescreenwriter.com and look for this episode, which is number 23. A quick few words about what I'm working on. I started my next Christmas script, and I'm glad I didn't start it too soon because my old idea, by comparison to what I came up with a couple days ago, it just, now that I think about it, my old idea was pretty boring and probably cliche. So you don't be in a rush to start writing. It's sometimes you really have to stew a little bit before the best idea comes to you. I'm also going to give myself a deadline. I'm only going to give myself like 2 weeks to write this script. And then I'm going to go back to rewriting, or I'm going to start rewriting my novel. I finished my novel, my first novel, which is a really big deal. And I so much more appreciate writers. I appreciate them anyway. I love writers. I love books. I love movies. But it's really a different world, and you learn so much. And I'm even thinking of doing a Kickstarter campaign to help cover the editing and book cover costs. It's just fun, you know. You really feel like an entrepreneur, like it's your own little business if you go the self-publishing route, which is really all I'm interested in. If anything, I'm learning a lot, which I can use for film projects and other screenwriting projects. So that's it. And now here is the main interview. Kelly Peters is an author and award-winning screenwriter with more than 20 produced features. Current film projects range from romantic comedies to horror, with projects in development with multiple production companies. She's also the author of the Regency romance novels in the Angel Employment Agency series. Originally from Pennsylvania, Kelly now lives in Los Angeles. When not writing, she can be found kayaking, crafting mixed media journals, or planning her next overseas adventure. Her next feature to be released is the animated family film Gracie and Pedro, Pets to the Rescue, coming to U.S. theaters on October 18th, 2024. Well, Kelly, thank you for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, I told the audience a little bit about you, but why don't you share your journey of breaking into the industry as a Christmas movie screenwriter?
Sure. So that story really starts probably like in the early 2010, around there. I started in a writing group with a fellow USC alumni named Amy Taylor, and we worked in the same writers group for 10 years probably before we started writing movies together.
Wow.
And between the two of us, we had connections to companies that were doing TV rom-coms, kind of in the Hallmark style. And so once we kind of started down that road, we kind of looked around. We were like, okay, what else is kind of like these rom-coms? And of course, Christmas movies are so often rom-coms.
Right.
And
right.
it was a very natural evolution to start looking into who else is making these movies, what ideas do we have for these movies, and how can we start getting movies made in that genre as well. And while we were doing that, we were identifying other producers to reach out to and make contact with.
Okay.
And so that's kind of how we got started with that. Our first Christmas movie happened really because we cold contacted.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
So
Some people, and got started from there.
When you say writers group, do you mean just like a group of writers who either got together virtually or in person and would just kind of share screenplays to get feedback? Was that what you mean by a writers group?
Yeah, absolutely. There were just three of us in the group, but we
Oh,
were all. It's
wow.
actually for writers, like when people ask me about writers group, I always say like, you don't want more than 4 people because
Okay.
otherwise the group gets unwieldy, and
Yeah,
it takes
yeah,
you
yeah.
so long before your turn comes up.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Um, but that meant every 3 weeks I had to produce something.
Oh,
There were people who were waiting.
ah,
Um,
I like that idea.
yeah, and I was so fortunate that my fellow writers in that group were so devoted, and we kept that group going for 10 years.
Yeah,
Um,
I'll say. Wow.
yeah, and it was great, and I learned so much.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and just having to produce writing is
A
such
good
a
teacher.
gift. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, that's how it works. You got to deliver. Now, on Christmas movies, how do you balance meeting audience expectations while staying fresh and not predictable or cliche?
Right. I mean, there's the difference between a cliche and a trope. A cliche is the boring version, and the trope is the core idea that's kind of under there. Um, and when it comes to Christmas movies, there's all these wonderful Christmas activities.
Yes.
And I think when you lean into the details of the story, you find ways to explore those tropes in new ways. And so you're just not building a snowman, but you're
Uh,
building a snowman and a character is revealing a secret at the
uh,
same time.
right.
Or
Right.
you're decorating a Christmas tree, but you're also having a fight.
Right. Right.
And it's those story details that I think are really going to make the moment feel unique and original, because it's going to be unique and original to those characters. So,
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good point. When now after you finish a script and it's ready to go out, what's your next step and how do you move it towards getting into production?
yeah, I think even before you're finished, but even if you've gotten through a script and you want to stop and take a look at it and plan your next steps, I think the first thing to really think about is this going to be producible?
Mm,
I mean, every year there are a couple of big budget Christmas movies that come out, but the vast majority of these movies are very low budget. Most of my movies have been $1 million or less. And producers, have managed to pull off some really great stuff on very tight budgets. But the easier your script is to produce, the better chance you have at
mm,
selling it. And that means you need to look at things like your cast. Most of my movies don't have more than 12 speaking parts.
okay.
So you need to, if you have a waitress with 2 lines, ask yourself, does she really need to be there? Like, it's great to have kids and animals in Christmas movies, but they're both expensive and not always the easiest
Right.
things to work with, for good reasons. You don't want a 4-year-old working a
Right.
15-hour shoot day. That's not okay.
Right.
Um,
Right. So
but
the 12 parts, so you don't have a lot of under five
uh,
lines?
not with only 12 speaking parts.
Yeah, okay. So
You
these are
know,
okay. Okay.
if there's a way to get somebody else to deliver the information, that's
Okay.
what we'll do. Like,
So,
if there's a way that, like, your best friend runs in and says, "Oh my God, I just heard from the mayor that XYZ," so you don't need, you know, to
right.
to pay another character to speak those lines.
Okay. So in that total 12 speaking parts, that includes anyone who could have been an under five actor.
Yes.
Oh, that's impressive. And
Yeah. So,
do producers go ahead?
mhm. I mean, sometimes there is a little wiggle room on that, but across all of the movies that I've worked on, when they're this low budget, 12 is
Yeah.
usually the cutoff.
Okay.
So,
That's good to know.
it's a
And
good chance to be creative.
do the producers also tell you max locations?
Not necessarily, but that's definitely something to keep in mind. And I've definitely gotten to the end of scripts, and producers will come to me and say, I've got, a scene in this house and a scene in that house, but it means
Right.
moving the
Right.
filming
Right.
crew across town, and that'll take half a day.
Yeah.
Is there any way we can, like, reuse this scene? Is there any way that we can move this over here? Sometimes I get notes like, hey, it'll take us, 1 day and 2 hours to shoot all these actor scenes. We can't afford to have this actor come back
Right. Right.
just to work 2 hours. Like, what can we do to consolidate, cut things down, make it a little easier to fit within that budget?
And
Um,
is there an average number of shooting days on these $1 million budgets?
um, I think it depends in terms of, uh, your crew, your director, your producer.
Hmm.
Um,
Right.
2 weeks,
It's fast.
if they get 2 weeks, I think a lot of times they're really happy. It can be really fast shoot days. So anything you can do as a writer to make it easier on your producers and your directors, they'll be really happy about it. It also kind of goes in for set pieces. If you've got like 6 scenes in the town square with a big crowd,
Oh,
especially
yes.
post-COVID,
Right.
you
Right.
know, those can get really tricky and expensive.
Right.
Same thing with special effects. Like, don't crash that car if
Yeah.
a flat tire, gets your character stranded in her hometown just
Right.
just as easy.
Right.
Um, and like, especially like before I started getting things produced, I would think to myself, well, producers can just tell me that after the fact. Why are they, you know, why can't they see how brilliant my script is and then just tell me how to fix it
Right.
after they've bought it? And yes. But at the same time, particularly when you're trying to break in, and we've all heard this, we want to make it as easy for that producer to say
Right.
yes.
Right.
And when a producer gets a script that has been written for the budget and written for the genre, they understand that you're a writer who knows their stuff.
Right.
And they understand that you're somebody who's going to be easy to work with, and you're not going to come back and fight them
Oh,
over
no, 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 no.
the talking reindeer that you have at the end that just gives a wink and a nod. And, not that I don't love a good talking reindeer, but
That's great. Oh,
I
yeah.
don't want your talking reindeer to get in the way of your Christmas movie being made. So,
Oh, exactly. Now, how would you suggest screenwriters expand their network of producers? Networking, film markets, if yes, to film markets, which ones? Competitions or utilizing online platforms?
I've had some luck getting stuff optioned through a site called Inktip.
Oh, really? Okay.
They do host scripts, but they also send out a weekly newsletter that will give you at least two free options for places to submit to.
Okay.
You can pay for more, but those two are free. I
Hmm.
think the other reason it's a good um, resource to look at is that you can kind of see what
That's
producers
true.
are looking
Yeah,
for.
that's true. Yeah.
In Christmas movies, are they looking for city Christmas movies? Are they looking for, suddenly does everybody want something on a ranch? Not all the movies on the list will be Christmas movies, but if you
Right.
you write other genres too, you'll be able to see, like, does everybody suddenly want thrillers? Does everybody suddenly want,
Hmm. Yeah.
vampire movies or what have you?
Yeah.
Um, and I think especially when you're working without representation, which I did for the vast majority of my career,
Yeah.
it can be tough to really get a great pulse on what
Yes.
producers want now. It's easy to see like what's coming out, but that's what people wanted a year ago, 2 years
Right.
ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but it's a peek into what the industry is hungry for.
And then do you attend film? I mean, before you were repped, did you attend film markets besides the ink tip? Was there any or competitions that you thought might help or was it more like online platforms?
In terms of competition, I submitted to Austin, and I did go to the Austin Film Festival one year. This was a while back, pre-COVID. Austin does or did at the time. I don't want to. It may have changed, but I don't think it has. But they do a really wonderful film festival geared towards writers.
Right, right,
Um,
right. No,
and
I think they do.
yeah, and I got to go and I got to see a lot of really wonderful panels. And
Okay.
I'm fortunate enough to live in LA, but especially if you're not in living in one of the big film markets or places where a lot of stuff gets produced, Austin can be a great place to kind of go and spend a long weekend and
Hmm.
get a lot of information, see a lot of panels that, might not be accessible to you otherwise. So that was when I did the Page International
Okay.
Screenwriting Contest for several years and placed. I couldn't tell you if that actually helped me, but it's entirely possible.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and the Nichols Fellowship is very often worth pursuing because even if you've placed at a lower level, there's often producers who are willing to take a look at your work simply based off of that, and you don't even have to win the thing.
Okay.
Um, but those are the ones where that I've had the most experience with personally.
Right. Now you mentioned the conferences, but not film markets. And right being in LA, we've got the American film market. Do you think Christmas writers in particular might consider that should, or just focus on networking and maybe some other writers conference?
I haven't been as an attendee to any of the big film markets, so I couldn't speak from personal experience.
Okay.
Um, Generally speaking, my experience is that Christmas movies are being made by smaller producers and smaller producers who have a really clear sense of what the market needs and what they want to make.
Right.
Um, you know, you don't need to go fishing across everybody at a film market to find
Right.
your next hometown Christmas
Right.
rom-com movie.
Yeah.
Um, Necessarily. Like I could
Right.
be wrong. I haven't been, but I think you'll probably have better luck reaching out to individual
No,
producers.
I think you're right. I think you're right. And there is some producers that do like 10 or 5 Christmas movies a year. So there's a lot of like 60 or more than, or who knows how many Christmas production people who make Christmas movies. But some of them are like have the lion's share. So if you kind of target those particular companies, you're sort of ahead of the game, because uh, I'm sometimes I wonder, should I go to the AFM or should I'm right here in LA, should I try to network? The challenge with the AFM or any market is, well, I haven't been to that many markets outside of, well, except for Asia, but that was long ago. Um, the challenge there is that you may have some meetings, but not a lot. So when you try to knock on someone's door, they're trying to do a sale. So they don't necessarily want to meet with you. So it's a lot of knocking on doors. Oh, well, maybe we'll talk to you off, a couple weeks from now, or we don't do pitches during markets, that. So I like your idea of, enjoy the Austin Writers Film Festival. That sounds much more enjoyable than a film market. But that sort of leads into my next question. Now, you already answered, you don't attend film markets to pitch your projects, but what do? Do you rely on representatives or a combination of writers' conferences and your reps?
Well, I've particularly as a solo writer, I've only gotten repped in the past couple of years. And before that, it was, excuse me, it was a lot of doing cold outreach on our own, being very targeted. Um, Even if it was as simple as going on IMDb and figuring
Mm,
out like, who produced the last 5 Christmas movies that I watched,
right, right,
and finding their information, whether it's on IMDb or LinkedIn or what have you, and
right,
then reaching out to them with a well-crafted, very specific introduction and pitch,
right,
not overwhelming them with a ton of information
right,
and giving them just enough to let them know that you're a qualified professional or you're a very talented amateur
right.
who's about to be professional.
There you go. There you go.
Maybe give them a log line or two of what you're thinking about writing or what you have. Um, and then also be prepared for a lot of crickets, um, which is fine. It is like that's the name of the game, and that's the name of
Yeah,
the game
yeah,
of sales, no matter where you go or what you do. Um, but you might get lucky, and you might find out that you had a script set in Florida, and you have a guy who a producer who's already in Florida and they really wanted to do a Florida Christmas movie.
Right. Right.
Um,
Right.
you know, and at that point it's a numbers game, but
That's right.
it's always going to be a numbers game. And the other thing I would say is maximize your network that's existing, even if it's a small one. And I admit that I am not the best networker. Um, but in terms of, who do you know? Who do people know?
Right. Right.
Um,
Right.
being willing to ask that question, which I had to practice a lot before I was comfortable with it.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
it can be scary, it can be hard, but you have to remind yourself that you're a professional or you're going to be a professional, and this
Right.
is just what professionals do. Um,
Exactly. Yeah.
and eventually I got to the point where people would start reaching out to me and being like, "Hey, I'm looking for a co-writer. Hey, I'm looking
Wow.
for this
Wow.
kind of thing. Do you have it?"
Wow.
Um,
That's
so
great.
keep at it, and that eventually it'll work both ways, and people will start coming to you for stuff as well.
Yeah. And you did touch on it's writers tend to be not introverts, but we sort of like, oh, it's just kind of like if I write it, they will come, but that's not how it works.
Sometimes, and I've been to film school twice, which is more film school than anybody needs. Don't feel like you need to go out and apply to film school. It's not necessary. Please don't saddle yourself with that student debt without being very
Right, right.
thoughtful and strategic. But sometimes we would hear like, oh, a good script will find its audience. And you
Mm,
might find people who love your script, but that's not the same thing as getting the script made.
that's right. That's right.
Um,
That's
you know,
right.
if it was just about like if you just wanted to tell a great story, please write a novel,
That's right.
and
That's right.
have all your control, and you know you will find people who will love it. But a script is not a finished product.
No,
It's this blueprint for this other amazing form of entertainment and communication. And part of your job
exactly.
as a writer is writing something that will get made, unless you just are happy writing scripts
Mm,
for your own joy and
yeah.
entertainment.
Well, if you're going to do that, you might as well write a novel. And then you
I
can,
mean, that's
yeah,
part of the reason I started writing novels. This was before I started getting stuff made. Is I was so frustrated
yeah, yeah,
writing scripts that like six people at
yeah,
screenwriting contests would read. And I
yeah,
found it really satisfying to put a finished product out there. And
yeah,
it didn't mean that I stopped writing scripts, but
right.
it certainly gave me artistic and personal satisfaction to
Yeah,
put stories out into the world while I was still trying to get movies made and write in other genres and pursue
yeah,
other
exactly.
career goals. So yeah.
Exactly. Well, one thing I'll just make a quick comment about novels. I'm writing my first novel, and it's refreshing because I don't have to worry about sending this. First of all, I don't have to worry about the budget. Second of all, I don't have to try to contact producers that get 300 emails a day. Now I'm just going to eventually market to Joe Schmo, Joe Jane reader, and I can think of a lot of fun things to do marketing wise, like get these businesses or somehow do a joint venture because there's a particular topic that I'm working on. I'm like, this is much more, well, it's like 3 or 4 times the work. You got a 20,000 word script compared to a 80,000 word, however long, 70, 80, 100,000 word novel. So anyway, I digress because I'm just getting into that now, and it's just a nice change of pace. So if you get a little bit frustrated with dealing, trying to sell your script, trying to get people to read your script, well, just write a novel, see where that goes. But um, well, speaking of getting a movie made can be stressful. How do you maintain a work-life balance, and do you have any hobbies?
Well, I used to think that, there are only two types of time. There's the time that you're writing, and there's the time that you should be writing.
No.
But it turns out that way lies madness. And I had to replace that thought with a better thought. Um,
That's good.
you know, I still have to do this. I mean, I still face an awful lot of rejection, even as a professional screenwriter.
Right.
Um, and I have to remind myself that, you know, the rejection isn't about me. It's not about if I'm a good writer. It's not about, do I have the other skills to be a professional? It's not about anything about me. My job is to keep showing up and keep doing the work. And I actually now I track my work hours,
Oh,
particularly since I became a full-time writer, because otherwise you could work all the time.
yeah, that's right. That's right.
And this way I'm like, you know what? I've put in a 40-hour week. Sometimes I've put in a 50-hour week. Sometimes I put in a 30-hour week, and I'm like, that's enough.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, but it allows me to see in kind of an empirical way, you know,
right,
have
right,
have I been showing up for the work? And
right,
is it
right,
time for me to take a break?
right. Because you are the boss and the employee. And
Yeah.
so and you're of your own business, of your own writing business, and it's a small business. And so you have to you have to be the boss that says, okay, employee, get to work, put in the hours. But the employee also has to, you can't just like, well, I think I'll just take a week off, every other week just because I run the business. No, you got to think like an employee and a boss, not at the same time. But now you mentioned earlier in your bio, you do sports and you do crafting mixed media journals. What's that?
This wound up being my COVID obsession when we were all
Okay.
like stuck inside. I discovered junk journals, which are kind of the intersection between scrap making and book making,
Oh, okay.
only without necessarily it being personal to you, but they tend to be handcrafted
Neat.
journals from a lot of times quite literally junk,
Yeah, yeah.
packaging, um, old papers, bits of
Really?
ephemera,
Okay.
um, you
Neat.
know, yes, and it became a dangerous crafting obsession that took over my dining room table for a very long time. I have it now contained.
I think
Um,
that could be your next Christmas movie. Yeah. I could see a yeah, yeah. No, anyway, something to consider. Now, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Oh my gosh. I would have started writing Christmas movies
Yeah.
earlier. I did, I have to admit, like, um, I've had so much fun writing all of the movies that I've written, and I've had so much fun writing the Christmas novels or the Christmas movies. But they're not necessarily the genre that I was watching myself.
Right.
I'm a huge horror fan, which is as far
Wow.
from a Christmas movie as you
Yeah,
can
yeah,
get.
yeah.
Um, and I spent a lot of time thinking like, oh, well, I'll write what I love, and lots of horror movies get made, and those are both true things, but it really kind of put blinkers on me, and I wasn't aware of like what the rest of
What the
the market
market
was
right, right,
was
right.
interested in, and there are just as many rom-coms and Christmas rom-coms that were getting
Right.
made. And I found my place there, and I got to do a lot of really fun stuff, and I'm so grateful. So,
Do you think there's the market? I'm just curious, the market for rom-coms or Christmas movies or female-led thrillers is bigger.
oh gosh, that's a hard
It depends
question.
on, I guess it depends on if what you're writing for, because you sort of focus on that. Like when I was started this podcast, I couldn't get an accurate number. On one article said 170 Christmas movies were made last year, and then another one said 105 or something like that. Now romance movies are on Hallmark every day, and female thrillers seem to be on Lifetime or Hallmark as well, like all the time. So I guess it just there's a for those three, but maybe Christmas is bigger because it's like there's Christmas in July and then the end of the year, but there seems to be such a unending need for these movies. Or does that?
There's such a huge appetite. There's also a Great American Family,
Right, right,
which might have
right,
been GAC previously. I do think the Great
right,
American Family now. There's also Up TV, um, and
right,
of course there, all the streaming
right,
everywhere.
right.
So it's I would have a hard time if I had to put my money down on something, I might say rom-coms.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
with maybe thrillers coming in second and Christmas third, a very close third.
right.
Um,
Good.
would be
Good.
my guess. But there's certainly a lot of Christmas movies.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're very right. Like the appetite for them does
Yeah.
not seem to be going anywhere.
No.
So,
If anything, it seems to be growing.
I mean, I think people have figured out that, you could always use a little Christmas.
Right, right.
It doesn't matter what
Yeah.
time of year.
That's
If
right.
if
That's
you're
right.
wanting to feel cozy,
That's right.
and we've certainly seen cozy take off in other genres and other mediums.
Right.
I'm thinking specifically the cozy mystery.
Right. Right.
Um, so there doesn't seem to be any end in sight. So it's
Good.
still a great genre to work in.
That's great. That's great to hear. And a few of my other guests have said it's a great place to start because you already know, dare I say, the formula. It's pretty cut and dry, and you just have to figure out a fresh way to tell it. And there's such, like you just said, there's such an appetite for these movies that it's a nice place to start. So, yay. So that's good news for the writers out there that are doing Christmas movies. Now, to wrap up, would you like to share any social media details or website links so our audience can keep track of your work?
Yeah, I can be found at Twitter or X. Are we still calling it Twitter? Still
Yeah,
calling it? I don't know.
well, whatever you like.
I, you know. But I'm at KL Peters Writer on Twitter. And as mentioned at the top of the show, my next movie to hit the world is the animated family movie Gracie and Pedro: Pets to the Rescue. And it will be hitting US theaters on October 18th. It's a lot of fun, and we've got a lot of big stars in it. So
Oh, cool.
uh, if you're looking for something to see with your family this October, it'll be a good one.
That's great. That's also my birthday. So
Oh,
I'm
happy birthday!
well, Kelly, thank you for sharing your knowledge and your experience. And thank you for coming on the Christmas Movies Screenwriter Podcast today.
Thank you so much. It's been so great to be here.
And now for my action checklist, I have 4 items for your action checklist from my interview with Kelly. Number 1, optimize your script for production. A few of my guests have said this. You need to focus on creating scripts with fewer than X number of speaking parts, speaking roles. And Kelly said 12, and that includes the under 5 roles. The waitress that comes on and, would you like some coffee? Or, forget that. So Kelly said 12 speaking roles max. That includes everybody. Minimal locations to increase your producibility, especially for low budget movies. Now, some guests have said even lower numbers for the cast, like 6 to 8 speaking parts. I mean, you really got to be creative. So keep the cast numbers down. That's number 1. Number 2, you can network through platforms like Inktip. This is the one that Kelly used a while ago. You can expand your network and get scripts noticed by using this platform. And smaller production companies do look for Christmas movies here, as well as other genres. One nice thing I like about Inktip is that besides making your script visible to production companies, you can also get 6+ leads a week. And you can email those companies directly on the platform. Now, it's a blind email. You don't know who is getting your email pitch until after you hit send. But then Inktip informs you who the producer is. And those leads every week, it sort of gives you a little mini snapshot of the market. What are the producers looking for right now, which is very helpful. I joined it. I took Kelly's advice and I joined it, and I'll let you know how it goes. But it's not, if anything, I'm learning about what the market wants right this week. So that's helpful. Number 3, maintain a healthy work-life balance. Kelly mentioned you should track your work hours and set boundaries to avoid burnout, which is a great idea. Consider integrating hobbies or personal interests, and like Kelly's mixed media journals, to maintain balance. And number 4, writers groups. This is very good advice. She said she started with a really small group, 3 people, and she advises don't go over 4. Now, a long time ago, I joined a writers group that had like 20 people. It was crazy, and I never could get my script read. And I totally agree. Stick with small numbers. And And you'll have to write more that way. You'll have to be, on top of your writing. Well, that's the show. Thank you for listening. To show your support, please give us a 5-star rating on Apple or wherever you get your podcasts. And fuel more great content by buying me a hot cocoa on Buy Me a Coffee. Just look for the page Christmas Movie. And explore other inspiring podcasts and blogs on our website at christmasmoviescreenwriter.com. I'm your host, Karen McCann. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you on the next Christmas Movie Screenwriter podcast. Bye.